Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
As I said to you a couple of weeks ago, we've been doing this program for 31 years, and during that time we keep finding some subject that we've never done before, although there are other issues we repeat from time to time. And today's one of those days when we're doing something for the first time. I want to welcome Jim Melton to our program. He is with the Spokane County Sheriff's Department, and he has a very important job to do, and the subject for today's program, and that is the use of canines to detect explosives, or use of dogs to deal with detecting explosives. It's been an important duty, but even more so now with the awful threats that we've gone through and terrorism. And Jim, welcome to the program. It's good to have you here, and I'm proud to say to our audience that you're a former student of mine some years ago, and congratulations on the work you do. And your dog you have with you today is Logan. I don't think the audience are seeing the dog right now. He's a beautiful dog, and thank you for being here. We'll have a series of questions on how you work with him to protect us and have public safety against explosives.
Well, thank you.
And as always, I'm very pleased to have our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, and she shall commence today's questioning.
Well, I've had a chance to meet Logan and of course talk with you a little bit about Logan, but I know our viewers would be interested in knowing what Logan's background is. How did Logan get to the place he is right now?
All right. Well, I'll start off with the real easy question. He is a Labrador. I get that question daily. What is he? Is he really all lab? And he is. He's a 100% black lab. He's male, and he'll be 3 this May. How he came to be with me and within the program, he started out to be a guide dog for the Guiding Eyes for the Blind. He came from a puppy raiser, went through that year-long training just to become a housebroke dog and properly socialized. He went to the city of New York, where he was then tested by the Guiding Eyes to see if he would work real well for a guide dog. Unfortunately for the guide dog program, and fortunately for me and the local area, he didn't prevail there. He had a couple different issues, and so basically they washed him out. And the ATF took a look at him and said, well, we want that dog. He has a tremendous work drive. So the ATF picked him up, and he's been with them since about August of 2001. And we were slotted to go to school together at the end of September of 2001. But then, as you know, 9/11 occurred, and everything got pushed back. And so he was maintained at that facility until July of this year, where we went to school.
And he lives with you, is that right? He stays at your house. You're his feeder. He's with you all the time.
Right. You know, when he's at home, he's a general pet, as everybody can think. They have a dog at the house, so he's home with the family, and he's with me. And when I go to work, every time I leave, he goes with me in the car.
And can you tell us what kind of attributes are you looking for in a dog that's going to do this kind of work?
What the ATF kennel staff does is they look for a dog that has a strong drive. May it be a play drive, okay, or the fact that they like to play, they like to work, they're interested in what you're doing, they're not aloof and on their own agenda, they just ignore you and go off and do their own thing. They're real attentive to what you're doing.
And again, as we said at the beginning of the show, he's really a beautiful dog, and he's very content there. But I noticed when he came into the studio, and it was a strange place for him, he was assuming he was here to work. And so he was a little bit, I guess, eager is the word that I would use. And so maybe you can share with us how you communicate with him when it's something like this, or he's just at home, and how you tell him when he's really on duty to find these dangerous explosives.
Okay. Well, you know, you're right, Tony. When I brought him in, it was a new environment, and whenever he's exposed to a new environment, like any dog, he wants to know his surroundings, so he may make a casual loop around the perimeter of the room and notice different objects. But in his case, and other working dogs, when they go to a new spot, hey, it's time to work. They figure they're on the job. I've never been here before, we must be here to work. And so naturally, they're going to want to do that. When we work, we haven't talked about it yet, he's a food reward animal. So one of the things he keys on is I have a food pouch that I have to wear when we're actually working. And he knows there's a different piece of equipment that sits here with dog food in it. He can see that, and to him that's one of his cues that we are here to work. The other thing is I have a preparatory command and a command of execution to let him know, you know, kind of like a runner, on your mark, get set, go. There's a preparatory command, which is the word ready, which lets him get online with me. We're about to work, and then I say seek. Simply, let's go find it. And then he's off and running.
And so it's a combination of those terms. I thought he was about to go to work there when you said those words here, but still he's lying there calm.
Right. Well, Tony, there's, not to interrupt you, but there's also a lot of voice inflection and body language and animation that comes from the dog handler. It is definitely a two-part system. So he has a nose and the ability to smell things that I never could.
But you're just a general conversation here now. He knows that's not the tone of voice you use when he's ready to go to work, and then plus you also don't have the food pouch.
Right, but I could sit right here and change my voice and get animated, and he would perk right up, and he would think, hey, it's time to go to work. So there's a lot of that you have a tone of voice and a body language that you use when you're working, and that you never use it any other time other than when you're either working with a dog or training him.
You certainly won't ever mislead him, because that could really affect his future performance.
Exactly.
Now, as he does his work and is successful, or even if it's not found, I'm sure there are times when it's, fortunately there are no explosives, but then I assume the way you reward him is with the food pouch, and has he got certain things he likes and knowing he's done a good job?
Well, yes, he eats Iams dog food. Everybody wants to know, what's he eat? Well, he eats Iams dog food. And that's the only thing he eats, and he never eats out of a bowl. He is a 100% food reward dog. So the only time he eats is when he has a positive alert and finds explosive odor. So 7 days a week, twice a day, we set up a problem, and that's how he's fed. He's never fed out of a bowl. He hasn't eaten out of a bowl in a year.
Now, if there's days that you're not working, so you still have to go through a routine with him even though you're not really on the job?
Exactly.
So he's fed.
It's just a way to maintain the animal in the discipline that he's doing.
One other question before we go back to Janelle. Again, he's young and healthy, but how long does a dog usually work in this kind of capacity? At what age would he probably be retired?
It's on an individual basis, but the average is we're going to get 5 or 6 years out of him without any difficulty. And we're under a 5-year program with the ATF right now, which is who sponsors the dog. And so we're going to work 5 years for sure, and then we go back and do a pretty serious reevaluation and decide, is he still interested in the game? And if he is and he's still working, there's some dogs that are in their 8th year.
Okay. Now, I said that was the last question, but one more because you brought to my mind. You said he's financed by the ATF, or the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, even though they're sponsoring that. But you work for the Sheriff's Department in Spokane County, so there's a cooperation between the Spokane County Sheriff and the ATF on some of these particular investigations.
Oh, yes. And just to back up a little bit, when we got our initial training, we spent 10 weeks in Virginia, and he had spent 6 weeks there, what you might call doggy boot camp. That's what people like to refer to, prior to me getting there. So that 16 weeks of that training and the year and a half that he spent before that, that's all paid for by the ATF. And so, they get the product up and going, and then the department, we come in, and so then we have this tool, and then when the ATF needs the tool for their investigations, they have the tool to use at their disposal as well.
Sure. Thank you. Janelle.
Well, I'll follow up on Tony's question just a little bit. You work with all kinds of law enforcement agencies then whenever you're called. Is that the way it generally works?
Right. It's a tool that's, based out of the Spokane County Sheriff's Department, and we use it. We use Logan in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I believe we've done, I didn't bring any paperwork, but about a dozen different searches. Some of those searches have been for our detective units. Some of the searches have been for the ATF. Some of them have been for the Department of Corrections. So the law enforcement community at large has this tool at their disposal.
And the second question I have is, now Logan has to keep going to school, I take it. He probably has to keep training, and you have to keep training. How does that work?
Well, it's daily. Just because of the food reward system, we train every day, which makes me a better handler and gets him, I would say, more refined as an explosive detection canine. But we have quarterly in-services, and we also have yearly recertifications.
About how many dogs are there in the Spokane area, Spokane Coeur d'Alene area, of different types? Let's start with that first. Let's start with the specific first. How many explosives detection dogs are there, and then maybe how many dogs do you think generally are working in the area?
Well, explosive detection canines in Spokane area that are law enforcement based, This is the only dog. The Fairchild Air Force Base has, I believe, 2 dogs at this time, possibly more. And then you get to the other side of the state. There's several on the other side of the state, just because there's a larger population base there. And we have another ATF dog in the same program out of Boise.
But now there are other dogs that sniff other kinds of things with law enforcement.
Oh, there's a multitude of dogs. I know that Coeur d'Alene City has a drug canine. Kootenai County has a couple patrol dogs. And Spokane County, my agency, has 2 patrol dogs and 2 narcotics dogs. The city, I believe, has about 9 or 10 different dogs between patrol, which is your typical shepherd that people see, and they think of the patrol dog, and then they have other breeds of dogs that do the narcotics work.
So altogether, there are quite a few dogs in this business, but some dogs are going to sniff different things than other dogs. For example, the drug-sniffing dog is going to sniff for drugs. The cadaver dog is going to sniff for cadavers. The explosive dog is going to sniff for other kinds of things.
Right. And what they do is some of the dogs are cross-trained, like the Forest Service here. We have an officer here that has a shepherd, and it's a patrol dog, and he will also do narcotics work. So it's a cross-trained dog. Logan is a single-purpose dog, explosive odor, because he did come out of the ATS program, and their focus is strictly explosive odor. So they're not going to cross-train their dog into a venue that they don't work.
You've mentioned shepherds and other types of dogs. Are there some particular breeds of dogs that are better at doing these different kinds of searches, or put another way, are there some dogs that really would not be fitted for this kind of work?
You know, Tony, like I'd said before the program here, I'm fairly new to the community, but I can tell you I've seen dogs that have come from the pound. People call them a Heinz 57 or a mutt. They went to the pound, and they go look at these dogs, and they're attentive when you walk into the kennel. They like to play, and they show at least an average or an above average level of intelligence, so they look like a trainable dog. We have a blue heeler that's a narcotics dog, and we have a black lab. The city of Spokane has several different breeds of dogs that work. So it's
okay. Yeah.
It's the aptitude of the individual animal. I can speak about the ATF program, and they go with Labradors. One, because they have a great source to get the dogs through the guiding eyes from the blind, because they are healthy animals. I mean, they know that the dog is healthy, and you're not going to develop a problem a year down the road after you put so much time and effort into the animal. But Labradors are intelligent. They adapt to different conditions, the weather, real quickly. They don't have a shutdown period where they're getting cold or too hot and they don't want to work. And they possess a nonviolent disposition, so you can work around people in the community without the fear of the dog being aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Now, when Logan's at work and he comes upon what he's looking for, does he give you certain kinds of signals? How does he tell you that he's really found? It may be enclosed somewhere where you can't see it yet. How does he communicate with you that he's now finished his task and found what you're looking for?
Well, sure. When you work a canine, no matter if you're looking for a cadaver, as you mentioned, or if we're looking for a fleeing felon that the patrol dogs are looking for, narcotics or explosives, the dog has a change in behavior. We all have our average mood, our average movements, and then when something changes, if we're startled or we're laughing, we have a change. So do the dogs. So it's really on the handler to watch your dog, look for that change in behavior. Is he sniffing more rapidly? Is he really concentrating on one area? And has he picked up his pace? Has he slowed down his pace? And you've cast him on a general line to search, and he's deviated from that, and he's going his own way while he's working. That's one of those changes you look for. It's an indicator that he is on odor. And then in the case of my dog and the explosive detection dogs, they have a passive alert. When they finally get to the source of the odor, as close as they can possibly get, he'll sit down. It's the only time when we're searching, the only time he sits down is when he's on odor, when he has an alert. And some of you mentioned other dogs, the narcotics dogs, they have an aggressive response. They'll bite at or scratch the item. We wouldn't want that with bomb detection.
Right, of course, very much so. Do they ever bark, or is that another signal? Or they?
Logan doesn't. I have seen some dogs that they become very animated and excited because they know they're going to get the reward of the ball or whatever the reward is. So they're real happy that they've achieved their goal because they're about to get the reward. But we haven't trained them to do that.
Okay, Janelle.
sometimes you probably have to travel with Logan. How do you do that when you have to travel with him to a location? Now, sometimes you'll, of course, be in your own car, and that's not a difficulty. But let's say that you're called to go somewhere that you have to use public transportation. Has that ever happened to you?
Right. We went to, the first week in November, we were called down to Tucson, Arizona to work on an ATF homicide case that was there. And we hopped on a commercial flight right here out of Spokane. He flies coach. When I went to the school, we were all shocked to find out that there's two types of dogs that fly coach. Obviously the guide dogs for the blind and explosive detection dogs. They'll fly coach. So we just get on a commercial airliner and fly.
Well, he's just so wonderful here. I can imagine that on an airliner he would just be the same. He would be probably the hit of the show. He just loves to. He just laying there and probably loves to see the people. And
that's what we did. Luckily, the airlines treat you pretty good, and you get to get on last and try and get off first. But on a couple occasions we didn't, and so everybody that walked by wanted to pet the dog, and he happily sat there and let 80 to 100 people pet him on the head. And when we flew, he's just like he is now, lays down and goes to sleep.
I know there are going to be some people out there who are going to wonder, how do you get your job? If some young person is out there that would really be interested in handling a dog for law enforcement, how do you do that?
Well, it can be a long road or a short road, you know. Some people fortunately get into the profession of law enforcement and relatively early in their career, 4 or 5 years, they're able to get a position. It really starts with a good education. I honestly believe that, so that you can get a good job in law enforcement and you become successful within that job. And once you get your base knowledge, 4 or 5, 6 years on the street as a policeman, then you can dive out into different avenues that are within the agency if you want to work traffic or investigations. And you just apply within your agency.
And then eventually, if you get selected, you go to school and you learn all the ways to handle the dog.
Right, you never stop learning. Every day you put more on your page. And that's really, when you ask what does somebody have to do, you have to have the desire to learn. Just go out and learn.
I know, Jim, when we were preparing to do this program and we're working on a schedule, you've been so cooperative, but you said, Tony, there's a chance that I won't be there because unlike some positions in law enforcement where you work a shift and you know you're going to come on at a certain time and go off a certain time, your schedule is very different. So sometimes you must move even different hours of the day, or even, like you said, go at a great distance. So tell us a little bit about how your job is different in scheduling.
Well, we try and schedule ourselves when the multitude of calls come out. When is there need? When do we have the bomb threats come out? And when do a majority of our detectives serve search warrants so that we can be available? But things arise. You have people that commit crime. We know that they're armed, and then they flee the scene. Well, and they're apprehended some distance away, and there's got to be a firearm somewhere between where they were seen and where they're apprehended. So the schedule really is dictated by the need of the animal, which is around the clock. Mm-hmm. If I can tell you, sure, Tony, most people think of explosive detection, and they think of 5 sticks of dynamite with some wires and a clock ticking from Hollywood. Yeah. But really, the real advantage with Logan is not only the ability for him to look for explosives and bombs and work bomb threat areas, but since he can find explosive odor, he can find a handgun. He can find bullets. He can find bullet casings. So after we have a shooting scene, we're able to use Logan to recover evidence from a scene that you may spend hours or days looking for some bullet casings in the grass, where Logan can pinpoint those much quicker and save time.
That's a really good point, because so all of his work is not for looking for a bomb. It's in these.
Oh no, we have people that hide firearms in their house,
sure,
in their vehicles, around their property, and when we're looking for those, he can really be an advantage.
Yeah. Now, when you're on the scene and he finds certain things, your concentration is with Logan and getting that, but I assume there are other law enforcement officials, federal, state, or local, that are there with you, and then once it's discovered, they take charge of the crime scene and they do the reports. You're not responsible for all that too.
No, generally by the time we get called to a scene, they've already secured a scene if it is a crime scene, and then I'm the handler, so I go and deploy the dog, and any evidence that is found, there is a detective or another officer that would document that, and then I just document in my paperwork that we found it.
Now, when the trial comes, and oftentimes, well, many times, the law enforcement person must testify, and the investigators in charge will testify. But do you ever have to testify also?
Oh, certainly. If there's anything in question of how was it found, who found it.
The procedure, no.
Exactly. It would be no different than any other piece of evidence.
Sure. Thank you. Janelle?
It has always seemed to me that people who have a close relationship with the animal grow very fond of the animal. Are you trained to be somewhat objective in your response to Logan, or do handlers generally find that they become very fond of their dog and develop a very deep relationship?
I would say that, not to take away from anybody who's had a pet for 15 years, but I would say any police officer that's had a dog, there's a bond that goes far beyond what you've ever had with a pet before. I mean, I spend every day with this dog. Every day. I truly love Logan, and I don't know a handler. I have not met a handler yet that has a dog that doesn't love it, or unfortunately their dog has, served his term and he's gone now, that, doesn't have a little sorrow for that. So we're trained to work with the dog objectively and let the dog do his job, but there's definitely a strong bond.
Now, do you ever have times when you have to discipline Logan?
Well,
or are they rather infrequent because he's a pretty good actor?
I've been fortunate with my dog, and also with my type of canine. Obedience, as you can see, he's very obedient, isn't a strong point. That question is answered differently by the handlers that have patrol dogs, or under a different program with their narcotics dog. I don't discipline him in the sense of with a choke chain, and people think of hitting their dog. We don't do anything like that. It's basically no praise is his negative. So he doesn't get the pat on the head when he does a good job. He just doesn't get anything. And that is, with a dog with this temperament and his easygoing attitude, that's enough to let him know I'm not happy with him.
Now, I think that you have a couple of sons at home, and how does he interact with them?
Just fine, like a normal pet.
He loves them.
Oh,
and
certainly.
They love him.
Certainly.
Now, at times when there's certain investigations going on, and of course Logan is on the scene, but are there times when in other words, you might be at a place where there's a possibility of bombs, there's a possibility of drugs, there's a lot of things going on. So are there times when investigations taking place and there are different dogs on the scene?
Oh, certainly. We'll do a search warrant where we're looking for narcotics and firearms. So one dog will work and then the other dog will work. We don't work side by side.
That on one dog goes in at a time, because in other words, it'd be a confusion if you have two dogs in
right,
the same
and when you're working with your dog, it's really fluid. It's a fluid search. You don't stop and you're not stagnant. So to try and work two dogs in there, it would confuse matters, and you'd always be in each other's way.
And the dogs would be confused.
Right. Well, you just not so much confused, but if we're moving and we don't want to change our pace, we're gonna have to wait for the other dog.
Before you go into the scene, and dogs are like people, they react to others on the scene, but not in the actual search. Do the dogs interact, or are they friendly with one another?
I think dogs are a lot like people. Sometimes they're friendly, and sometimes they're not.
Sometimes a dog just doesn't.
It just depends on the
like
dogs.
another particular dog.
Right. Certain personalities really mix, and others we learn real fast which dogs can be together and which dogs shouldn't even see each other.
Yeah. That's so human, because we either have a chemistry, we don't. That it really does affect them very much. Jim, do you plan on continuing to? This is a very great specialty, and you're very much in demand. But through your law enforcement career, are you satisfied to continue to work in this area, or do you have other areas in law enforcement that you'd like to work later?
Well, I can tell you this is the best thing I've done so far. I've been real fortunate to work a lot of different specialties so far in my career. This is by far the best, and I can't really see beyond Logan right now. I just can't see beyond him. I'm having a good time with him, and we're both still learning. And I look forward to the next 5 or 6 years. And after that, I guess we'll have to reevaluate.
Or you could adjust another dog. Now, once they retire Logan, and he's so special, what are the rules within law enforcement? Is there any chance you get to keep him, or where does he go after his work is finished?
There is no agency that I've heard of anywhere, to include other countries, that when a dog is retired, that if the handler would like to have that as a pet, that's what happens. It's the best thing for the dog. He may not be able to go out and work a solid day and work in a car and all the things that wear the dog out, but he may have another 4 or 5 years in him. and he'll just come home and be a pet.
And the rest of his life be satisfied with your family.
Yeah, I mean, he's working so hard now, as you can see.
One thing you said about him that was real interesting. He's just wonderful, but we've got him on a kind of a little bit of high platform here, and he didn't much at first want to do that. So you say that part of his personality is that he doesn't like heights.
Right. When we're working, I mean, he'll go up a ladder.
Sure.
Or at least a very steep set of stairs, and he'll jump on this table and he'll work it. But when he's on his casual time, he'd rather be as low as possible.
So it's kind of like some humans when they have to go up and climb something for rescue. It's okay, but other times not.
Yeah.
Janelle?
How long is Logan's span of attention? Can he wait? Can he go quite a long time when he's on a search?
Well, it's not so much his span of attention, it's his physical endurance. When a dog is sniffing, even though you may see him and he's just walking, but he's sniffing every inch that he goes by, that's like us jogging at a pretty good clip. So traditionally I can get about 35 to 45 minutes out of Logan, depending on the temperature and the airflow within the room. And then he needs a break to recover. He still wants to work. He's always wanting to work, but he's just tired and needs a break.
So sometimes when you go out, you may be gone for longer than that, though. It might take longer than that to search an area.
Right.
So then you just take a break in between and maybe
right.
have a little downtime.
Whatever area you're searching, you break it down into areas and you search it, and when you know that area's been searched, you clear it off and you go to the next, and when he needs a break, he gets a break, and we wait and then bring him back. There'll be no sense working a dog, may it be a patrol dog, cadaver dog, an accelerant dog, whatever the canine's job. There's no sense working the animal if it's fatigued, because you're not having any success.
I understand that dogs have a much keener sense of smell than human beings do. Is that true?
Yeah, roughly 200 times.
On that note, we have to bring the program to conclusion. I know, Janelle, you'd like to ask other questions, but the clock always wins on this program. And Jim Melton, it's so great to see you again. It's been a long time, and you were a wonderful student, and you're a wonderful law enforcement person, and we congratulate you on the work that you're doing for the public safety.
Thank you.
Because that's very dangerous what is going on out there, and we're so happy to meet Logan, and we know he's very, very special. Ladies and gentlemen, we've so much enjoyed bringing you this program, and again, as I said at the beginning, it's the first time we've done this particular subject, and we would like to invite you to come back next week and be with us when we'll shift to another issue on this program. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.